Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to rank the 8 worst legendary champions in the game. Now some of these champions I actually would prefer like an Apothecary or a Cold Heart, like some of the best rare champions over them. Just way more overall utility in the game. And a lot of these champions, you see that legendary when you're opening that shard and you get so excited and you're like, who is that? And that's never the reaction that you want when you pull legendary, right? So these champions, I have to give a huge disclaimer though, guys, is first off, they're all, you know, especially if you're free to play, 100% free to play, and you pull one of these, they're not so trashy like they're uncommon or common, and they're better than most rare and a lot of epic champions, even the worst of the worst in legendary. And you should absolutely never use legendary champions as food. I'm assuming you guys already know that, but Plarium has a tendency to buff legendary champions more so than other rarities, or at least at a higher, you know, probability that or the higher frequency, I should say, versus other rarities inside the game. So keep your legendaries, certainly. If you don't want to 6-star them and build them out, that's fine, but definitely put them in the vault. So let's go ahead and jump right to it. I do want to actually start off by talking a little bit about Yannick, right? She's not on my list, guys. Now, she did receive a buff recently, but the thing with Yannick is, where is she? The thing with Yannick is that she has awful like reviews and stuff, and I think that she's actually not one of the worst legendary champions in the game anymore. And, you know, I want you guys to tell me if you think I'm wrong. I don't own Yannick, so I have to give that disclaimer out there as well. But check it out. You open up with her A2. Think about her like in arena offense, for example. Attacks one enemy, plays a perfect veil buff on her for 3 turns if the attack is critical, and then grants an extra turn, okay, on a 3-turn cooldown. Then you can go to the A3. AoE attack will ignore shield buffs, remove shield buffs from the target if the champion is under a veil or a perfect veil, and then deals extra damage equal to 15% of the removal shield. You know, I think she's actually really solid now. If I'm missing something, guys, you let me know, because to me, opening up with that A2, then going into the A3 is really solid, and then has an AoE attack all enemies 2 times instead if the champion is under a veil buff. So for me, I actually think that Yannick is not one of the worst legendaries, even though everybody's still, all the tier lists that I saw, even the most recent ones still ranked her in like the bottom, you know, 5 at least. Let me know, again, guys, kind of putting it out there to anybody who owns Yannick. Am I wrong? Does she suck? Let me know. So we're going to go ahead and start out with the worst legendary champion inside the game. The good news is he is actually going to be getting a buff, and I'll tell you guys what the difference will be as we review. But it is Mashaled, and yeah, he's really, really bad right now, right? Attacks one enemy, heals his champion by 30% of the damage inflicted on the A1, whatever. On the A2, places a 30% increased speed and an increased crit rate buff on this champion in one ally for 2 turns. Then grants an extra turn, which is not bad. He's not doing any damage. His damage scales really, really poorly. Attacks one enemy, no AoE on the A3, and the heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. Inflicts 50% more damage against targets under buffs, which again sounds like it's not that bad, but it scales the multiplier, which we can't see. You'd think it would scale pretty well with a 1454 base attack and a 103 base speed. Not too bad on paper, but Mashaled just does not do any damage. Now the good news is a big buff coming to him, so I'm excited about that. It's going to be all allies on the A2 will be granting a all allies get the 30% speed, and all allies get the increased crit rate, including himself. So that's going to be really solid on the Tornado. And on the A1, it's also going to add a leech debuff on the A1 as well. I think, let me see, is there anything? AoE on the A1 as well. So attacks all enemies, heals his champion by 30% of the damage inflicted, and has an AoE leech debuff as well. So that's really, really solid. So hey, stay tuned. Next patch, we will be getting a buff. But as it stands right now, the time of this recording, April 3rd, 2020, yeah, he's awful. Next up is going to be Warchief. Warchief is a skinwalker. I kind of like this video already because we get to talk about champions that we just don't talk about. You don't really hear much about any of these champions on YouTube, on Twitch, or really anywhere out there on Reddit, etc. So unless people are asking for them to be buffed. And it would be really cool because some of these champions, they have a really cool aesthetic and their kit has potential, like Warchief. Warchief doesn't die, but he also doesn't do much, right? He doesn't put out a lot of damage. He does provoke, but only one enemy. So there's just way better options out there. He has the chance of provoking on his A1. His damage is based on defense, so he has that going for him as well. And again, his kit's not awful, but the thing is he's not super versatile enough in arena. There's just better options out there, even plenty of better epics with provoke in the game. But you know, everywhere else in the game, sure, he's not going to die and you can provoke one enemy at a time. And his passive, this is why I say he's not going to die, reflects 60% of the damage taken back from the attacker. Defense increases by 10% for each dead ally. So that's kind of nice. Again, 60% of the damage back, but the thing is, it's not good against bosses. Bosses do relatively very low damage compared to their HP. So sure, against waves, maybe in campaign, again, maybe if you're totally free to play and you pull him, he could be a solid part of your team. But in terms of comparatively to other legendaries or even the best S tier rares or even a lot of epics in the game, his kit is just lacking, okay, overall. And yeah, that's Warchief. Next up is Teyla Gorman. Teyla Gorman is an orc champion. She has kind of a cool aesthetic about her as well. She looks nasty, right? And anyway, on her A1, attacks one enemy, steals one random buff from the target, whatever. Attacks one enemy on the A2 as well, has the HP burn, and places a continuous heal buff on allies. Not too bad. Look at her speed, though. And look at her, just speed, 92, and her damage. I don't have Teyla Gorman, but I've seen, I did research before this video. She's just not hitting very hard at all. A lot of these issues on a lot of these champions are just they don't scale very well, or their multipliers are not there underneath the hood. This is not visible to us raid players. And if you own any of these champions and you think I'm wrong here, go ahead and let me know. I would love to hear if you guys have success with any of these champions. But attacks all enemies, 85% chance of placing a leech and a heal reduction for 2 turns. Not doing a ton of damage either on a 4-turn cooldown for that AoE. Leech and heal reduction, 2 of the meh kind of debuffs in the game right now, although Leech will be receiving a bit of a buff in the next patch. Next up is Kandra Fawn. He takes the cake for the best looking worst legendary. I just love the demon spawn aesthetic on these legendaries, no matter who they are. I mean, look at these guys. They're just all, they all have like such a cool look about them. And anyway, back to Kandra Fawn here. He has an interesting kit. One enemy places an extra hit if the target is under an increased attack buff, whatever. And then on the A2, attacks all enemies. Again, his speed is pretty low for a legendary at 96. His attack is pretty high. But again, this ability, the Butcher's Glee, his A2, is just not multiplying for a ton of damage as you would expect with a 1509 base attack. Grants an extra turn, resets the cooldown on the hunt skill if this attack kills an enemy. Sounds good. On the hunt, plays a perfect veil buff and a 50% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns. So perfect veil is awesome, but the increased attack on just him for 2 turns, you know, if you could fix his whole kit, I feel like, if you added the extra turn on the A3, right? If you just take an extra turn after this, and you start out with a perfect veil, then he goes from being one of the worst ranked legendaries out there on any tier list to definitely, I don't know if he's S tier, but he's incredibly more viable. Next up is Brokaw the Bloodied. He also looks cool. All these champions look cool. The artists do such a good job at Plarium. He's an orc champion, magic affinity. You can see not used really anywhere, just like all of these champions for the most part. 2 times at random, decreased speed chance on the A1. AoE fills the champion's turn meter by 20% for each enemy under a decreased speed debuff. Oh, okay. Damage based on attack, by the way, on all these abilities. Again, a really modest slash average slash kind of low for legendary on the base speed. And on the A3, attacks one enemy and steals their turn meter. Just kind of a real meh kit overall, right? Just so many better options. The only thing that he actually has going for him here is the increased ally speed in dungeons by 24%. If you pull him and you don't have many champions, maybe you're free to play, or maybe you're just not a big spender, you can definitely use him in lead for the speed in dungeons, because the 24% speed in dungeons is actually pretty rare inside this game. So at least he has that going for him, but overall, just kind of a lackluster champion. All right, next up is Reachoff the Bold. Now, Reachoff is we're going to spend the rest of our whole video in the Bannerlords, because Bannerlords are notorious for having some of the worst champions inside the game. There are some exceptions, don't get me wrong, but yeah, we're going to go ahead and finish this list of 3 all Bannerlord legendary champions. Can you guess them? By the way, if you disagree with me, I also want you to tell me who I should have put on the list instead, okay, of a champion that you think shouldn't belong here. So here he goes. On his A1, let's just see what people, again, don't take too much stock into reviews. I'm just curious, what they are, if they kind of shine in one area at all in terms of people who own them. And an AoE on the A1. Low attack for a legendary at 1398, low speed at 95, decreased target's turn meter by 10% of the damage dealt. Okay. Attacks one enemy 3 times, places a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns, cannot be removed. And that's not each hit places a 5% poison. Then we would be talking, right? On a 3-turn cooldown, meh. And then attacks 1 enemy, copies 1 random debuff from the target and places it onto other enemies. Kind of cool, but, Clan Boss, you can't spread, a debuff spreader is not going to work against Clan Boss. The best debuff for Spider is going to be HP burn, but you can't duplicate that ability. No more than 1 HP burn can be on 1 target enemy at the same time anyway. So overall, Reachoff the Bold, just kind of leaving us wanting a little bit more. Maybe an AoE on the A3. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways to make him a little bit more viable. And attack and faction crypt's not really helping us out in the aura as well. Next up here is Lord Champ Fort. So Champ Fort is another, all of them are going to be Bannerlords, guys. Attacks 1 enemy, 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Meh. On A2, attacks all enemies, a decreased accuracy and decreased attack. Not too bad, but on a 3-turn cooldown on the A2, it's not a game changer, especially what you're looking for, again, out of a legendary champion. Sure, not awful, but, much rather have like a Tyrell, you know what I'm saying? On his passive has a shield buff, and then will place a 15% decreased speed debuff for 1 turn on whichever champion destroys the shield. Again, it's just like, it's not bad to have, it's not a bad ability, it's not a bad passive, but it's just, overall, you're just kind of left wanting more out of your Lord Champ Fort. Not to say that he's unusable, just doesn't feel very legendary, especially compared to the insane kits out of like the S tier legendaries in the game. And of course, not every champion can be S tier, but Lord Champ Fort certainly is not. Oh, guys, and you know how I feel about Killian the Lucky. I actually had a video all about how I kind of regretted fusing him. He's just not that good, except for faction crypts. You can use all of these champions in faction crypts, especially Killian the Lucky. Other than that, though, I don't know, man. I mean, it was nice that it was an easy fusion, but of course, as fate would have it, Plarium gives us an easier fusion on a champion who's very, very lackluster compared to other fusion champions of the past, such as the last one. I think it was Tormund before Killian, right? So 1 enemy 2 times, each has a chance at decreased speed and has a chance of stealing the turn meter. His A1 is really the best thing about Killian, in my opinion. Like his one ability that's just like, okay, that's really, really solid. He can kind of, in arena, he can kind of take 1 enemy out of the equation a bit with the A2, but this is his money ability, in my opinion, and for this to be the big ability that you're looking for, not very useful in dungeons at all. I don't know, not very useful, not going to be useful at all against bosses, and it's just like, it has to be arena only. In arena only, there's just so many better champions out there, even epic and rare champions, if I'm honest. 1 enemy, 75% chance of placing the stun for 1 turn, and then has a chance of stealing the target's turn meter. Not bad on head ringer too, but it's a 1 enemy ability. It's just not a game changer for you, and that's what you're looking for out of your legendaries. And then has the cool passive of Charmed Life. It really adds, it gives meaning to the Lucky in his name, right? One of the following buffs at the beginning of each turn. So that's kind of a cool ability, but it's random, and it's fun in a sense that it's unpredictable, but also you can't build it's hard to build him not knowing, which of these abilities. You can't build him with a lower crit damage or crit rate figuring, or a lower attack or whatever, figuring that, oh, he's going to be self-buffing himself. It doesn't really affect, because you can't predict it. It doesn't affect, you can't take advantage of this Charmed Life. You just have to see it as kind of a bonus to a very average champion at best. So guys, that is what I have in terms of my top 8 worst legendary champions. Again, switching things up a little bit because, maybe we can nudge Plarium to buff one of these champions. And again, I'll remind you guys, if you own one of these champions, let me know if you absolutely love them and how you use them. Maybe I'm overlooking something, but yeah, safe to say, not a big fan of any of these guys. I would be maybe a little bit mildly disappointed, although I would be still happy I pulled a legendary if I pulled any of these champions. So guys, I hope you're hanging in there, staying, healthy out there, trying to stay mentally fit and sane, because isolation can be a scary and weird thing, especially not knowing for how long it's going to last. For me, not a little tangent here for 1 minute to end the video. But for me, I'm cool with, I can stay inside and never leave and social distance and never see a movie or go to a restaurant or whatever again, if you tell me it's going to last for a month or even 3 months. But just not knowing how long this could be or how bad this could be, that's what's challenging for me. That's what's challenging. So anyway, guys, I'm hanging in there. I'm trying to do every day. I try to take 15 minutes to an hour out of my day to do something with my hands, not just on my phone or my computer, just to try to, keep moving and keep my brain working in different ways. So that's just kind of a little piece of advice to you guys. And also journaling is something I kind of just started kind of taking to it a little bit here. It's gratitude journaling. I saw it on Kyrgyzar YouTube, but it's one of the proven ways to make yourself happier is to actually sit there every day. It sounds corny, it sounds cheesy, and feel free to roll your eyes if you want to, but just write down a few things that you're grateful for. And it's kind of a little bit of a meditative process, but it actually makes you feel a lot better, especially if you do it for a few weeks straight. So that's kind of what I'm doing as well. Anyway, guys, wishing you nothing but the best. Thanks for watching my content. I appreciate you guys. And as always, take care, guys.